We no longer have to wonder or guess if a new Star Fox game is on its way or speculate what that would be like. After Fox McCloud appeared in the Super Mario Galaxy movie, rumors were rampant of a new entry in Nintendo's famous rail shooter series, starring everyone's favorite group of anthropomorphic space mercenaries. A short while later, Nintendo confirmed the rumors with a surprise Nintendo Direct dedicated to Star Fox 2026, a new entry in the series releasing just 1 month later. Well, new being the relative term, it turns out that Nintendo was going back to the Star Fox 64 well, as this latest entry would once again remake or reimagine, or well, the internet can't quite decide if it's a remake or how many times Star Fox 64 has been remade or reimagined or retold, or however you choose to describe it. What it's actually doing was featuring the defining event in the Star Fox universe so far, the Lilat Wars, a story that has been told and retold in the original Star Fox 64, Star Fox 64 3D, and Star Fox Zero. American-based Velan Studios, known for Midnight Murder Club, Knockout City, and Hot Wheels Rift Rally, helmed the development and showed up to the Nintendo Direct with a modern interpretation of Star Fox 64, fresh with new character designs, cutscenes, and shiny new graphics. Having missed the chance to speculate on what exactly a new Star Fox game would mean, we instead get to speculate in the opposite direction. Does speculation even have direction? Now that we know what this new Star Fox entry is like, what does it mean for Velan, for Nintendo, and for the future of the Star Fox franchise? One thing is absolutely certain. By choosing to retell Star Fox 64 again, Nintendo has all but guaranteed that a large part of the conversation around this game will be its inevitable comparison to the legendary N64 title. I'm usually pretty turned off by this. I really try to discuss games on their own terms and avoid describing games by comparing them to other games. Is the hard path in Star Fox the Dark Souls of rail shooters? But with Star Fox 64, this feels almost unavoidable. The game is a revered classic for a reason. If you don't know why, stop this video right now and go and play the original for Super Nintendo, and then the sequel for the N64, and come back. So if you're a bit younger in the viewing audience, let me stress this to you. It may not seem impressive to you now if you've grown up with a more modern view of gaming, but the jump from Star Fox to Star Fox 64 was mind-boggling, and pretty indicative of the entire transition from the era of the 16-bit consoles to the age of 3D. There really hasn't been something like it since, as the leaps between console generations have felt less impressive, at least graphically. Now, the early age of 3D was pretty rough as the industry was trying to make the transition to developing games in a multi-dimensional space with multi-dimensional polygons, but it was a pretty well-established consensus that Nintendo nailed this transition as good as you could have with titles such as Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and of course, Star Fox 64. From art direction to pioneering camera controls in a 3D space to translating iconic Mario and Zelda gameplay to the third dimension, the best games of the N64 are often remembered as defining games of the generation as well as the decade. The reason I bring all this up is to stress the overall importance of Star Fox 64 in this discussion and why the comparisons will be there. When I think of video game sequels of games that followed up their predecessors, that built upon the foundation left by the original and ended up becoming better, there isn't really a game that encapsulates this idea of a sequel better in my mind than Star Fox 64. The original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo is pretty rough. It's an amalgamation of polygonal shapes and flashing lights that can be hard to look at as it jitters along. To me, it was always more a proof of concept more than anything else, a stopgap powered by the Super FX chip to help make the Super Nintendo's case against Sega. Star Fox 64 is an improvement in every possible conceivable way in which you could consider something an improvement. Barely defined triangular R-wings were now full of detail. Fox and friends ran down a long hallway in that iconic opening sequence, and they talked to each other. Gameplay felt more responsive as the game ran better overall. The story was more fleshed out and the music was superior. With only their second at-bat, Nintendo hit a home run and ultimately made what many consider the definitive version of the Star Fox experience. Since then, every single Star Fox thing that has come out has ultimately been influenced and compared to Star Fox 64, for better and for worse. Star Fox Adventures and Star Fox Assault tried to move the series forward in different and interesting directions, but the conversation kept coming back to Star Fox 64. And the most recent entry, Star Fox Zero, which was made by Platinum Games, was criticized not only for its control scheme, but for failing to bring anything new and meaningful to the Star Fox 64 experience. So this is the environment that Star Fox 2026 debuted into. Unable to escape the ghost of its great predecessor, it seemed that every reviewer conversation around this game was going to be defined based on what it did in relation to Star Fox 64. After coming off what I interpret to be a positive reception to his inclusion in the Super Mario Galaxy movie, Nintendo unveiled a brand new take on Star Fox 64 at their Surprise Direct, featuring more realistic designs for the legendary mercenary team. Initially, I was pretty put off by this redesign, and I remember making more than a few jokes about it, as did a majority of the internet. It was a baffling move to me considering that Fox had just appeared in the Mario movie featuring a character design that was closer to what he's traditionally looked like in the GameCube Star Fox games and in Smash Bros. If your goal was to synergize with the hype of Star Fox appearing in the latest Mario movie, sticking closer to the established designs would have been a no-brainer, but honestly, after spending a decent amount of time with the game, I've come around on the designs, and I would now say my opinion of them is largely one of indifference. They're fine, they exist, I don't hate them, and I accept them as part of the overall art direction for this game specifically. They certainly didn't detract from my experience at all. Same with the voice acting, which is something that people were criticizing pretty heavily. Having been forged in the crucible that is Kingdom Hearts, I've spent hundreds of hours listening to Goofy and Mickey Mouse try to explain metaphysical concepts of light and darkness to me that the snarky, over-the-top anime-esque delivery of Fox and Co.'s voice lines didn't really bother me at all. The characters of the Star Fox universe are mostly a collection of overly confident, snarky individuals, and I feel that the voice performance captured that pretty well. Although, I will say there is something so iconic about the voice performances in Star Fox 64 that isn't replicated here. Something about the muffled radio static that your teammates would communicate to you through, or Peppy yelling at you to do a barrel roll, or Slippy screaming through his comms when he's hit, just adds so much value and identity to that original game.
Do a barrel roll! Pretty smooth flying, Fox. It's quiet. Too quiet. Can't let you do that, Star Fox.
I don't have an in-depth breakdown of the gameplay because at this point I feel like anyone watching this at least has a pretty good understanding of what this game is about, or can basically infer what it's about from the footage playing in the video. It's a rail shooter that mostly progresses forward, but sometimes has elements of freedom in something called all-range mode. The thing I wanted to touch on gameplay before going into the rest of the Star Fox 64 stuff is complaints on the internet about the game being too short. The rail shooter Star Fox games have always been on the shorter side, at least to complete one playthrough of it. If your definition of finishing a game is made it through once to the end and then put it down forever, then I can understand why you might feel that way. But this is based on an older game, and some older games tended to be shorter than the 20+ hour narrative experiences or endless live service game treadmills that we have today. The point of Star Fox was never to make it through once and call it a day. It was designed for replayability. The games included different routes to take in order to encourage multiple playthroughs. The hit counting system was designed to incentivize players to replay levels and get higher scores. Secrets could change pathing from playthrough to playthrough. Sure, you could do a run of Star Fox in about an hour, but it was designed for you to revisit over and over with the goal of mastering it completely and uncovering all of its secrets. This is an aspect of the original that I think Velan captures brilliantly. In addition to the campaign, Star Fox features a challenge mode which allows you to revisit each level you have unlocked in the campaign individually, featuring a list of unique challenges to complete for each. This makes it incredibly easy to constantly replay levels to complete the challenges. But the challenges aren't just arbitrary goals to pad out game time. The challenges in each world are designed in such a way that they actively teach you how to completely master a level. The challenges highlight opportunities in each area that more often than not help you score more hits, show you a secret path, or teach you how to complete a boss fight really fast. All of that was designed to fully show you the depth and detail of each level, and that so when you go back through the campaign to do a full run, you could use that knowledge to rack up high scores and get medals, take alternate paths, complete the hardest path to get the true ending, and truly demonstrate your mastery over the game itself. For Star Fox, mastery is the point, and for a lot of older games, that was the case. For older games that were shorter, a large part of the fun was in mastering them, to get better at playing them so you could complete them faster or to discover secrets within, and it was within this mastery that a true appreciation for the game could be found. I enjoy the basic premise of Star Fox and its campaign, but it was in challenge mode where I found a deeper appreciation for something that I was skeptical about, even if at the end of the day it still is a retelling of Star Fox 64. So now that the game is out and we understand what it's all about, the real question is, what was the point and what comes next for Star Fox? The most pressing question for me is whether or not this is a one-off, or is Star Fox 2026 the foundation of future games to come? Well, at the time of writing this, we don't have solid sales numbers. The game appears to initially be successful, and honestly, how you would define that success is largely up to interpretation. Where there are fans of Star Fox who remember the games fondly, this doesn't seem like the Nintendo IP to sell tens of millions of copies. Right now, there are really two tiers of Nintendo properties in terms of game releases. Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, and Mario Kart are in the higher tier, games that come out and will inevitably sell tens of millions of copies. These are Nintendo's big hitters, their classic generation bread and butter. Then in the next tier, you have what I would consider the smaller but still iconic IPs, and this features things like Kirby, Metroid, Fire Emblem, and Xenoblade. Star Fox would most likely be included in this next tier unless it really sells. Note that this is not me saying that the number of sales a game has indicates its quality, just that they have more niche appeal than a Mario game. And this is one of the big separators between Nintendo and other companies. Even if a Metroid or a Kirby or a Fire Emblem game doesn't sell to the same standards as Mario or Zelda, Nintendo will still invest in those games, and they are still quality games. Nintendo's air quotes smaller titles allow it to fill the calendar year in between massive releases. Again, smaller being a relative word. Kirby and the Forgotten Realms sold 7.5 million copies. Xenoblade 3 sold almost 2 million copies. Metroid Dread sold over 3 million copies, and Fire Emblem Three Houses sits at just over 4 million copies sold. And all of the titles I just listed off are the highest selling entries in their respective series. Not to mention they've managed to reinvent or reinvigorate their gameplay in interesting ways to keep things fresh. So just because these games don't sell the tens of millions that Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon do, doesn't mean they aren't valuable to Nintendo or that they aren't successful. If Star Fox manages to sell a few million units, it would fit nicely in this category alongside these other games, and Nintendo would most likely consider this a success. Enough people voting with their wallet would tell them that they want more, and whether it was in this new art style or if they went back to the more traditional cartoony art style, I would be down for more Star Fox. If Star Fox 2026 is indeed the start of a series revival, then its retelling of Star Fox 64 should serve as the foundation to help move them away from this story and tell new ones in this universe. There's definitely room for an expansion of the Star Fox lore. I would like to see the relationship and rivalry between Fox and Falco continue to develop. Maybe you could have a game that serves as a prequel and could star Fox's father, James McCloud, and his exploits beginning the Star Fox team. You could even incorporate an element where James is trying to pay back the insane 80-year loan he took out to build the Great Fox. Fox Slippy and his friend Bill all have history with one another at the Academy, I even found myself wanting to know much more about the rival Star Wolf team, a game that forces Star Fox and Star Wolf into an uneasy alliance to combat a bigger threat would make for some great narrative story beats, or a game that even stars Wolf himself. I don't know, I'm spitballing here. All I do know is that I wanted more from this universe by the time I had finished multiple playthroughs of the new game. But Nintendo seems so unwilling to move away from the Lylat Wars narrative that has been told and retold multiple times now. At least Star Fox Adventures and Star Fox Assault, regardless of how people felt about them, tried to move the story forward in interesting ways to limited success, but my desire for more narrative investment with these characters keeps running into one roadblock that I just can't quite overcome. At the end of the day, Star Fox's identity is firmly rooted in what it excels at being, and that is a rail shooter with limited free roaming movements plus some other vehicles sprinkled in. I wouldn't want Nintendo to just put out another experience that mirrors Star Fox 64, even if it was telling a new story. I would want Nintendo and Velan to push the envelope of what it means to be a Star Fox game, for them to innovate on their core gameplay loop the same way we've seen them be willing to do with some of their bigger titles like Breath of the Wild. I'm totally not saying that we need a big open world exploration based Star Fox game. God knows enough of Nintendo's games have been infected by the Breath of the Wild formula, but maybe adding more elements of freedom while keeping rail shooter sections intact and abundant is a viable solution. In order to tell new stories with these characters, you would need to be able to innovate on the rail shooter experience or add something that complements it, especially to keep selling Star Fox games. Maybe there is a creative way we could have a blending of in-ship and out-of-ship experiences the way Adventure and Assault tried to do. You could spend multiple missions on one planet and innovate on the type of missions available that you have to complete to truly liberate that planet, and this would add a bit of strategy into the mix as well. I'm thinking of like a Galactic Conquest from Battlefront, maybe? I don't know. If Nintendo ever wants to move beyond Star Fox 64, it needs to put out different experiences so people's first reaction isn't to point at a new Star Fox game and say, oh, this is Star Fox 64. And honestly, I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do that. I'm not paid to figure out how to do that. I'm not paid for this at all. I'm just sitting in my basement at 10 p.m. talking to myself. The folks at Nintendo are paid and are smart enough to figure this out, and they have managed to keep their core franchises going in somewhat interesting ways long after the point where I thought it would maybe be impossible to do so. Mario's core set of verbs have been well established for decades, but has continued to surprise us by how versatile his main movement abilities are in a ton of different gameplay environments. Zelda had an extremely well-established formula before Breath of the Wild came along and broke the mold and opened people up to the idea that Zelda could change. Nintendo will have to find a way to do the same with Star Fox if it ever wants to escape the eternal looming specter of Star Fox 64.